Welcome, Climate Viewers. This is Jim Lee from ClimateViewer News. It's December 18th, 2016, and we got an electrifying show for you today. So I've got my good buddy, Chris Fontnot from a microwaveplanet.com on the show today. We're going to talk a little bit about the electrical universe and all of the fancy things you've never heard of, and you probably should, because if you don't know about electromagnetics, you're missing out on all the Star Wars and Star Trek that is today. So this is Chris's website over here at amicrowaveplanet.com, and here's this Facebook group, A Microwave Planet. Please join there. I'm a member as well, and that's my good buddy Chris right there. So, of course, I am Jim Lee from ClimateViewer News. This is the ClimateViewer News website. That's me. Of course, you want to check out ClimateViewer 3D over at climateviewer.org. And before we get started, I have one surprise, because I know there's a lot of you who are dying to see this. I've seen you all beating on the front door to the website. WeatherModificationHistory.com. No, this is not on the internet. As you can see up here, it says local host. I'm working on it. I'll probably have it up after the show's done later tonight. So look for it this week as the coolest Christmas present the internet's ever seen. And what's on it? Going to be a lot of things like the people of geoengineering, the patents, and the programs. You'll be able to scroll through or click on them like this. Still working on it. Looks like crap, see, but you got patents there. It'll be pretty when I'm done. Click here to load the map. Here's the timeline stats, and this is the geoengineering and weather modification timeline, complete with more links than you can shake a stick at. When you click on the pictures, they'll pop them up. When you click on the entry details, it'll give you the links, tell you all about it. Entry details, serial weather modification, weather modifier. With links and all that. So this is coming soon this week. Let me close this down, okay? Appears I have a guest in my bag there. Chris, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Oh, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Jim. How you doing?
Merry Christmas, man. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Well, my name's Chris Fontenot, and I'm in Ukiah, California. And let me see, I started a Microwave Planet a few years ago to try to archive some of the information and research that I've done in regards to weather modification, the electric universe, and the nature of our weather environment. So Jim and I met a few years back, I think 3 or 4 years back, and been in communication. I've enjoyed all of his work and watched him progress and build his site as well, and proud of what he's done. So I'm here to support him.
And I'm going to support you because I like the way you talk.
Man, I'm just no dumb coon ass. I don't know how anybody figures this stuff out, but I read a little bit, and I got a little engineering background in nuclear physics as well, so I can understand a lot of it. I'm not trying to be no scientist or anything like that, but I talk to a lot of scientists, and they seem to believe that, or should I say in private messages, communicate to me that we're on the right track. So congratulations, Jim. You're doing good work, brother.
Yeah, ditto, man. And it's always good to hear it, straight from the horse's mouth. You can try to get your fame online and get your adoration and likes and shares and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, the stuff that really keeps me going is like, I had a conversation with Dr. Rangasai Halthori from the Aviation Climate Change Research Initiative. And I broke it all down for him, talking about chemtrails and contrails and how you're just doing word semantics. And, to have him come back and say, you know what, you're right, we could probably do a better job. That's all the validation you need personally to know that A, you're in the right place, and B, you're on the right track. And I'm sure you get a lot of that, Chris, because I've heard about the Electric Universe conferences. Why don't you tell everybody about those conferences?
Well, I found out about the Electric Universe, I guess about 4, 5, 6 years ago, something like that. I started researching and looking into it and trying to explain away the phenomena that I was witnessing in atmospheric anomalies, so and space as well. So anyway, they actually have a great group of folks, scientists and novices and laypersons, that gather together once a year down in Phoenix generally, and have a conference, and a good group of people, and we all seem to get along pretty well. And they seem to allow their egos to go by the wayside, and we have down-to-earth conversations around the smoking table, which is real inviting with, people that are far more intelligent than myself. I nod a lot and act like I know what they're talking about. It gets me by most of the time. Then I have to go research.
Yeah, but the thing is that, like, as you're listening to people who are using very big words and talking very eloquently about something, even if you don't understand all of it, those nuggets start to add up. And then when you're back home and you're reading, some research paper, suddenly you have that aha moment where everything clicks and you're like, oh, that's what a maser is.
I think the key is, for me, is understanding the different terminology used in different sciences. So, we're going to speak on the nature of extremely low frequency harmonics, but that has multiple definitions. It depends on which discipline of science you're studying. It can go from 3 to 50 kilohertz. It can go from 0 to 20 kilohertz. So,
right.
On the science or the field of science you're studying by which they define those harmonics. So the same thing I'm finding in terminology in relation to the electric universe and conventional, or should I say settled science. There's terminology that's being used that define different phenomena in different ways, the definition of which may differ greatly, but the phenomena is the same. So good group of folks. The EU in general have a long-standing, have good science, and have a big following. So, I want to promote them, and they promoted me. Had one of the leaders of the Electric Universe, to tell you the truth, Jim, I thought this was just floored me. Dave Talbot, who is one of the founding members of the Electric Universe, and he stood up there in front of a room of 300 or 400 people, scientists included, and said to us that and I'm going to quote this because I don't want to get it wrong, if you don't think they're spraying something in the sky, you're not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that took me by surprise. I hadn't heard that type of commentary from the Electric Universe. Ben Davidson actually attended the conference the year before that and did a presentation there, who studies solar activity. So, I appreciate Ben's work as well.
Real quick, for those who don't know, Ben Davidson is Suspicious Observers on YouTube. Just continue.
Now, I want to say this. Dr. Kong Papuian is personally, for me, a gentleman that has enlightened me to the possibilities. And so the connection between Earth and Sun, as defined by mainstream science, is termed quantum vibration or quantum connection. And Dale Pond's work, he talks about it in terms of sympathetic resonance. And the Electric Universe, they speak of it in terms of electrical current Birkeland filament connections. So, all of these we're talking about the same thing.
That's right.
I think it's to acknowledge that the terminology may vary, but the phenomena is the same. The definitions by which it's described vary, and that's where the Electric Universe comes in.
Yeah. So what we're gonna have to do, guys, is I actually double booked myself. Me and Chris are gonna jump on another show here in about 30 minutes. We've actually got about 20 minutes at the most right now. So what I want to do is we're going to rapidly go through some very scientific stuff. We're going to I'm going to have the links up on the screen so that you can see we're not just making this stuff up. And I want, Chris to explain it to you. So this is one of the first links you sent me, Chris. You want to just briefly give this an overview?
Well, we're talking about the magnetic pulsations in the Alfven wave generation, the ionosphere. Anytime you have a harmonic, reference the document itself, but anytime you have a harmonic in the Earth's atmosphere, you have a simultaneous, instantaneous corresponding harmonic that occurs on the sun. So we're not talking about just geoengineering the planet. We're talking about geoengineering our solar system. So,
so let me break that down. So you're saying that if we affect vibrations like our magnetic field lines, like the flux transfer events thing that we were talking about,
that's mainstream science's definition of the flux transfer event. Now, Electric Universe defines that as a Birkeland current filament, and Dr. Kongpop Williams describes it as a quantum vibration connection between the two bodies.
Okay, so let's just throw out all of those terms and let's call it a tube. There is a vortex tube, because we want to keep it simple here, guys. We need to break this stuff down so you can digest it. There's a vortex tube that connects the north and south pole of our planet to the north and south pole of the sun. Would you describe that like that?
Precisely, at a specific wavelength.
Okay, so this tube is actually exchanging energy between the sun and Earth, and it's not just in the solar wind dynamic that everybody constantly refers to. You know, that we have an incoming wave of energy from the sun. That in addition to that wave that's constantly, it's like standing in a river. You know, you feel the water all hitting the front of your shins and your ankles, and if you turn around, it's on the back of your legs. It's all one directional. That's the solar wind. But this is actually like the salmon swimming upstream, because the tube comes out of the North Pole and it curves out into space and then down into the North Pole of the sun. So you actually have a big circle, is what I'm seeing. Not just the circle that we have where we rotate around the planet, around the sun. There is a second circle that is vertical that comes out of the tops of our poles. Is that pretty accurate?
Pretty accurate, Jim. Now, we don't know everything. We speculate on some things. There are missions that have been flown, the D1, D2, and TIDE missions, all polar satellite missions, indicated a ion acceleration 8.5 Earth radii, out from the North Pole. And that's as far as that satellite actually went. They don't have measurements further than that, and not out that trajectory. So, we're speculating on what the wavelength is. Dr. Kompop has a great presentation that he did on quantum vibration and that Earth-Sun connection. I would recommend everyone see it. It was in the presentation, the article that I did, Solar Perturbation. I want to say this. I want to make a quote here. Nikola Tesla said, and I quote, "Man could tap the breast of Mother Sun and release her energy toward Earth as needed, magnetic as well as light." Now, that was over 100 years ago he said that, Jim.
That's a fact. So at the end of the day, because we're just now, at least the public is just now coming to understand this solar connection, what we're saying here, what Chris just said from that quote from the brilliant Nikola Tesla, is that if we do pump some energy into this system, that we may be able to get a return in the form of infinite energy instantaneously. Is that either
in our direction, and toward Earth? See, toward Earth. That means that we can have a solar ejection, coronal mass ejections, and mass ejections from the sun away from Earth. That's possible as well. It depends on the perturbation that occurs. So, I'm learning, and other people that are studying these phenomena as well, and the sciences that are doing this work. Obviously, most of this stuff is highly secret. A lot of the studies and information is out there in regard to the connections. Dr. Kompop, as I suggested, is on the forefront of learning on these topics. I think Ben Davidson does a great job in covering solar activity. I don't think that he makes any connection to man-made perturbations, and I wish he would.
Yeah, and I'm going to take that a step forward since you opened the door. In fact, I was talking to him about polar electrojet heating and how the electrojet's an electric current in the sky, and that HAARP can tune that electrojet, and that may account for the trumpet sounds in the sky we're hearing. And in fact, he told me that I don't physics, and was very insulting. So not only does he not accept the fact that, that ionospheric heaters, that there is a long history, 60-year history of people doing ionospheric modification, using ion clouds and microwaves as sounding rockets and satellites dumping chemicals. This is a long history. It is very well documented, and it's going to soon be on weathermodificationhistory.com. Ba-boom. But yeah, he berated me, and I'm just throwing that out there because it shocked me. Like it hit me right in the face. I assumed that, he would be more receptive, especially when I'm dropping him a PowerPoint from Dennis Papadopoulos from the University of Maryland explaining how they tune the electrojet. But yeah, he just was like, whatever. you're stupid. Go learn physics. So that was pretty.
I just recently found another article, a paper discussing that magnetic flux connection and recreation of that same phenomena in laboratory experiments. So this is not something we can talk about in terms of Birkeland current connections in the electric universe, but the mainstream science is also doing these experiments, not only in laboratory, but in real world testing. So, I say this is that there's a lot to be discussed, and the more open we are to the possibilities, then more likely we are to find the answers. So I don't like consensus in general. I dislike someone excluding conversation, and in fact, I've been excluded from conversations because of my discussion of this phenomenon.
So let's just break this down. So this is the typical on screen. You can see that, right, Chris?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the typical scenario that everybody knows when it comes to the Van Allen belts and how the solar wind works. So sun's over here on the left, Earth is this little circle right here, and the solar wind comes in, it hits our ionosphere and our magnetosphere. This actually works as a shield, and it makes most of the solar wind flow around it. These orange lines are magnetic field lines. That is our Van Allen belts in here. And that's what protects us from being burnt to a crisp by the sun. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Magnetic rope observed for the first time between Saturn and the sun. And that's what the animation of what this tube looks like. And then over here, this is magnetic tornadoes could liberate Mercury's tenuous atmosphere. And it's talking also about these tubes. So these flux transfer events, new stuff, not well discussed. Here it is on Wikipedia. Artist impression of a flux transfer event. It's a big circle up here. It's right along the electrojet. And it's like the electrojet is the ring of the tube of exiting energy. So what's interesting about that, over here on this paper that we originally showed, we had what's called a flux, it says right here, ultra low frequency waves and the ionospheric Alfven resonator. So you guys need to know this term right here. It's called an IAR. And just bear with me 1 second. And what we have is right here. This is on an article that I wrote, and it's called How HAARP Really Works. Ionospheric Heaters, How HAARP Really Works. There's also a video on YouTube exactly the same. So I'm going to come down here, and you have a chart. And what it shows is down here at the bottom, this is a HAARP type ionospheric heater. And what it's doing is it's creating an ionospheric Alfven resonator. So what they're doing is they're using these magnetic field lines to actually resonate at a frequency of choice. They are creating a virtual antenna in the sky is what they call it. And I believe I have a slide right down here of the virtual antenna. And you can see that right here. I'll open it in a new tab just so we can see it nice and big. Ionospheric heaters as a virtual antenna. And this is the electrojet, okay? So it's the circle around the top of the North Pole. And what they're doing with HAARP is they're shooting energy into that. They're making this vibrate at a frequency of choice, which then radiates ELF waves in a direction of choice, usually along a magnetic field line. Back to the picture we showed, where you see the orange lines, they come out of the North Pole, they curl around to our own South Pole. So this is a mechanism that's not well understood by the public for sure. And it's not well described by the activist community as well. Would you say that, Chris, that a lot of people really don't get this stuff yet, that this is a virtual antenna in the sky?
For decades now, I've been arguing the point of how HAARP creates an ELF harmonic while it transmits it 10 kilohertz or whatever it's doing right now. I think it has a range of transmission from 3 to up to 10,000. But
just to clarify, it actually can produce down to 0.001 hertz.
See. So
I'll get to that slide in just a sec.
ELF harmonic, because we're talking about a wavelength of wave function that's extremely long. So essentially what they do is they transmitted a high frequency modulation into the waveguide of the electrojet, and by doing so they create an Alfven wave emission.
Right
And
there,
that
buddy.
alpha wave travels around that electrojet at or near the speed of light and creates the resonant harmonics that we call the Schumann resonance of
That's
this
right.
of our cavity. So when they induce a 2.5 harmonic by modulating the electrojet from HAARP or other facilities worldwide, what they do is they create that ELF sympathetic resonance between Earth and the Sun. Now, that's the connection, Jim. That's something that they have failed to describe in most of the discussions on HAARP. I know Pete Begich, Nick Begich discusses a lot of these things without talking about that. Dr. Bearden talks about a lot of these things without discussing that as well. We talk about scalar waves. We talk about scalar waves or non-Hertzian waves or longitudinal waves. They're all the same thing. So, it seems to be lost in translation. But the reality of it is that this connection's there. The mechanism by which we can create an ELF harmonic in our own circuit, in our own system is there. And we know through Dr. Kompop's work, the quantum vibration or sympathetic resonance is there as well. So,
that's right. So
geoengineering is far greater than just a chemtrail in the sky. Chemtrail in the sky is a process by which they can ionize the sky and increase the atmospheric conductivity.
There you go, buddy. So real quick, I'm going to tell them about this slide because you were bringing that up. So
Cornicom did a study as well on atmospheric conductivity and showed where it had increased 8 to 20 fold.
Wow.
So that's a significant factor. Aerosols, in fact, are naturally occurring as well over forested areas of our planet and artificially induced as well into the circuit through a number of mechanisms. But what they do essentially is create non-conductive layers between the layers of the ionosphere. So they're insulating qualities and increasing capacitance qualities of that ionospheric waveguide.
Yeah. So speaking of that waveguide, this is exactly what he's talking about. And what most people don't know is there's multiple ionospheric heaters around the world. Here are 4 of them. And what you'll realize is that based on where they are in the world, they actually inject into different what's called shells of the ionosphere. So there's different, the shells are pictured here. They are the curving line coming out like this. So with HAARP being up here near the top, it's going to take the long distance line right here, and it's going to fire its electromagnetic missiles into space, and they will return down here. Now, they actually have a buoy right off the east coast of Australia. It's called the HAARP one-hop buoy, and it listens for that signal. So whenever they fire it into space, it comes down here, the buoy hears it, then it comes all the way back. That's called a hop. And they actually have 2 and 3 hop transmissions where they send the signal, it goes all the way around, it comes back. While it's doing that, it's scraping radiation out of the Van Allen belts, and it's called radiation belt remediation. This idea of radiation belt remediation as destroying the Van Allen belts, like literally, we want to get rid of them. And this is HAARP making air glow. But let me go down here. The idea was we could protect ourselves from solar flares like the Carrington event or high altitude nuclear electromagnetic pulse. So nuclear bombs set off in space that would fry your electric grid like the TV show Revolution. Well, they've come up with this idea to use HAARP to suck that radiation out real fast. So this is the same thing we're talking about with the making ELF waves and with the the sun earth connection. It's just injecting electricity into the Van Allen belts. And what they've also found is when they shoot it up in here into space, it comes back down with reflected waves with precipitating electrons, which creates an artificial air glow, which is an artificial aurora. So that's what they do with HAARP. And this crazy guy right here, his name is Dr. Jacob Bortnett for the UCLA, and he's a consultant to Quake Finder. He says, at present, we don't think there's any downside to not having them being the Van Allen belts. And then he says, that's the most any of us can really say at the moment. So if that doesn't scare the crap out of you, I don't know what will. What do you think of that, Chris?
Well, I think there's a lady friend, you probably know, Alana
Yeah.
Freeland,
Good girl.
control of or full spectrum dominance of the electromagnetic spectrum. And that's what we're looking at, Jim. When we're talking about controlling the weather, we're talking about controlling the electromagnetic potential of the atmosphere of air masses. And by doing so, we're able to induce potential into that atmospheric air mass, and then move that air mass to where we want it. So controlling the Earth's atmospheric rivers of water is just simply a matter of controlling the potential of the ionized air. So I think it's interesting that controlling the Earth would have to entail at some point controlling the solar activity as well. And that's where Tesla.
It seems like that's where they're going with it, doesn't it?
It's when they talk about I'm not a fan of Michio Kaku, but he does discuss the types of civilizations, and he talks about controlling the planet, and then second stage would be controlling the sun, and then the third stage perhaps controlling the galaxy. So are we 100 years ahead of where they're telling us we are? Yes, I think we are.
I agree with you, bro. So guys, we're going to have to wrap up right about there. What I'm going to do is we're going to have Chris back on, and we're going to do 2 hours, because like I've talked to this guy on the phone at least 5 times, and we talked for 3 hours. I wish it had been recorded. That's why we're doing this now, because
we have to record some of that stuff, Jim.
Oh man, I'm just going to record you when you call me from now on. So I'm going to throw this up on the screen real quick, just to give you all a good head scratcher for the evening. So what we're talking about with these ionospheric heaters, I'm over on climateviewer.org/3D. This is ClimateViewer 3D. And what you can see in red here are the ionospheric heaters, like HAARP is right up here. Alaska. Over here in Puerto Rico is the Arecibo enhanced high frequency ionospheric heater, pictured here. Down here is the Jicamarca, Peru. Not technically an ionospheric heater, but it's 4.5 megawatts. It actually has more power than HAARP, so ionospheric heater. It is a super darn. So all of the yellow ones you see here are super darn, super dual auroral radar network. Over here is Tromso, and you can see it. 3 separate arrays pictured there. And let's see, we got Sura. This is the Russian one, the Sura facility. And you can see it there. And I think I've got an Indian one down here, the NMRF, National MST Radar Facility, 2.5 megawatts. Check that junk out. That is an actual photo of the entire field array glowing. Freaking awesome, man. That's so space tech. And this is the coolest looking one by far, the Japanese one. I mean, look at that jewel right there.
On the effing moon.
I mean, seriously, if that ain't Star Trek, I don't know what is. So yeah, these are fascinating things. That's why we're talking about them. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. The yellow ones are super darn, red are ionospheric heaters. Then we have all of the missile defense radars of the world. Each are usually over 2 million watts. This is the space fence that Alana Freeland talks about. You have the Digison network. Then you have all of the ELF, VLF transmitters of the world, each for anywhere from up to 3 million watts, and they're worldwide. So now we're talking about a microwaved planet. So
right on.
That's what we're talking about, baby. This is definitely a microwave planet. And Chris, I really want to thank you for coming on here, man. You're my favorite. We're going to have you on all the time. So when I do the show on Sundays, I'm going to be just like, even if I have somebody else, I'm going to be like, I'm bringing Chris so we can both just nerd up on it real quick.
Feelings mutual, Jim. We can discuss anything here. That's where we have to be, man. Listen, as soon as consensus attacks us and we can't talk about something, we're screwed.
That's right. Don't let people shut down your ability to conversate with strangers, with people who are not like you. Don't allow yourself to be put in a box. You are not a Republican. You are not a Democrat. You are a human, and you're a human before you're American too. So just remember that, man. We all love good information around here. Fight ideas, not people. And check out Chris on microwaveplanet.com. Check him out on Facebook. It's Microwave Planet. and definitely support his work. He's a very smart individual and highly respected in my book.
Well, thank you, Jim. By the way, I want to say that I've been pushing to get you a ticket to the Electric Universe conference, and the lady Susan Sherratt, who runs that, I think she'd be interested in having you. She's following you on Facebook and stuff, and is aware of your work. And God, I'd hope to have you out there doing a presentation in front of all these scientists. That'd be great, man.
It'd be a ball. I'd love to do a lengthy history of screwing with the ionosphere. But, you know, most people don't even know that I even am into this topic. My middle name is Resonated, in case nobody caught that.
I love that.
I know, but you know, like I haven't had the opportunity. Like lately, I've been talking so much about specifically geoengineering, cloud seeding, weather modification, chemtrails, that I haven't had time to get right back into the soul of things, the vibration of things. And it's good to have you on, man. We're definitely going to do this again. So, guys, we got to get out of here. Love you, mean it, Chris. And with that, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not. Love you, mean it. Be safe out there.